The following Appalachian Mountains horror story is real, disturbing, and should be used as a warning. The names and locations have been altered to protect the individuals involved. Viewer discretion is advised. What happened to Rebecca Chen on a Saturday morning in the West Virginia woods is one of the most disturbing cases I have ever come across. Because the scariest part isn't what was done to her on that trail. It's that the woman who did it had been planning this for months, and Rebecca never even knew she existed. So here's what you need to know about Rebecca Chen before any of this happened. She was 27 years old, a middle school science teacher at Jefferson Middle School in Charlestown, West Virginia, about 15 minutes from Harpers, Ferry. 5'7", stout in the way that people who actually use their bodies tend to be. Not a competitive runner, not even close. She squeezed in maybe 10 miles a week between lesson plans and parent emails, and the particular brand of low-grade exhaustion that comes from spending 6 hours a day managing the emotional lives of 30 12-year-olds who are all, simultaneously, going through the worst year of their lives. But those miles were hers. That's the thing you have to understand. Everything else in Rebecca's week belonged to somebody. Her mornings belonged to her students. Her evenings belonged to grading. Her weekends belonged to the stack of lab reports sitting on her kitchen table that she kept telling herself she'd finish by Sunday night. But the miles, those 10 miles, squeezed into whatever gaps the week left her, those belonged to nobody but her. No lesson plans, no emails, no parent who needed 5 minutes that somehow always turned into 40. Just her legs and her lungs and whatever podcast she was halfway through. So when her friend Danny bailed on the Harpers Ferry Halloween half marathon 2 weeks before the race, knee thing, totally legitimate, Rebecca wasn't even mad. Rebecca looked at the $42 registration fee she had already paid and made a decision. She was going anyway. Alone. And she was going to have a great time. And honestly, standing at that starting line on a cold Saturday morning in October, she was already having one. If you've never been to Harpers Ferry, here's what it looks like. It sits right at the point where the Shenandoah River meets the Potomac, two rivers colliding at the base of a gap in the Blue Ridge Mountains. The town itself is tiny and old, all Civil War brick and narrow streets that climb straight up the hillside. The Appalachian Trail runs directly through it. Like through it, white blazes painted on buildings, trail signs bolted to storefronts, through hikers with enormous packs wandering past the ice cream shop like it's completely normal. Which, in Harpers Ferry, it is. The race started in a wide gravel lot just off the trailhead, and by 7:30 that Saturday morning it was packed. 200 runners easy. Halloween costumes everywhere, vampires and skeletons, and at least 3 people dressed as the same scarecrow, which Rebecca found genuinely funny. Somebody had a Bluetooth speaker going, bleeding a Monster Mash remix into the cold air. Cowbells were already clanging even though the race hadn't started. A man in a full hot dog costume, bun, mustard stripe, the whole situation, was stretching his hamstrings with the focused expression of someone who intended to podium. Rebecca was not trying to podium. Rebecca was trying to run 13 miles through the October woods and feel like a person for a few hours. That was the entire goal. A woman in a witch hat sidled up next to her at the starting corral, adjusted her race belt, and offered Rebecca a piece of gum. Rebecca took it. They wished each other luck. That was the whole transaction, and it was perfect. The horn sounded at 8 o'clock exactly. The pack surged up the trailhead in one loud, laughing wave. 200 costumed strangers pouring into the tree line together, cowbells fading behind them, the monster mash giving way to the sound of 200 pairs of feet hitting packed dirt. Rebecca let the faster runners go. She wasn't here to chase anyone. She found her pace, easy, comfortable, right around a 14-minute mile, and she settled in. The trail was beautiful the way October in West Virginia is always beautiful. All rust and amber, cold light slanting through the canopy at an angle that made everything look like it was already a memory. The kind of light that made Rebecca think briefly that she could work this into a lesson somehow. Refraction, seasonal change, the way the angle of sunlight shifts as the earth tilts, something. Then she let it go and just ran. She was not thinking about her 7th graders. She was not thinking about the lab report stack on her kitchen table. She was not thinking about anything except the cold air in her lungs and the good, simple fact of forward motion. Behind her, just around the last bend, a set of footsteps found her pace, matched it exactly, and held. By mile 3, Rebecca had found her groove, breathing even, legs loose, the low-grade joy of forward motion doing exactly what it always did for her, quietly switching off every part of her brain that wasn't strictly necessary. No lesson plans up here, no parent emails, just the trail and the trees and the cold October air moving in and out of her lungs like a metronome. The pack had thinned out, the way it always does on the AT. That's the thing about this trail. It doesn't sort people dramatically. There's no moment where the crowd suddenly scatters. It just quietly puts distance between runners, a little more with every quarter mile, until you look up and realize the person ahead of you is just a shape through the trees, and the person behind you might as well not exist. Rebecca knew this going in. She'd run enough of these to expect it. She put her headphones in, dialed up the podcast she'd been halfway through since Wednesday, and settled into the comfortable solitude of the back of the pack. She almost didn't hear the footsteps come up behind her. Almost. They arrived easy and quiet, not rushing, not labored, just steady. And then a figure pulled alongside her on the left and matched her pace without a word. Rebecca glanced over the way you do when someone joins you on a trail. Polite, automatic, not really looking. Then she looked. Tooth fairy costume. White dress gone gray at the hem with trail dust. Plastic wings mounted on a vest harness, catching the October light at a slightly wrong angle. A wand in one hand, foam star on the end, bouncing gently with each stride. The face under the thin silver headband was maybe 40, maybe a little older. Hard to place exactly. Rebecca smiled the polite smile of a back-of-the-pack runner acknowledging a stranger and started to look back at the trail. Then the woman spoke. "I thought that was you," she said. Easy, bright, like they were running into each other in a grocery store parking lot. "I used to work at the dental office on Maple. I'm pretty sure I've seen you there." Rebecca blinked. She did go to that office, had gone there for years. Dr. Whitfield's practice, the one in the low brick building off Maple with the fish tank in the waiting room, and the hygienists who always asked if she was flossing like they already knew the answer. She searched the woman's face and found it after a second. Yes, the hygienist. The one who had done her cleaning maybe twice. Rebecca remembered her the way you remember someone who never did anything specifically wrong, but always left you with a faintly uncomfortable feeling you couldn't explain. The kind of feeling that made Rebecca, both times, schedule her next appointment specifically with the other hygienist without ever once articulating why. Oh, Rebecca thought. And then, arriving right behind it like a second footstep. Oh no. Something tightened in her chest, small and fast, like a fist closing. She kept her breathing even, kept her face neutral. deployed the teacher voice, calm, warm, steady, the one she used when a classroom was 2 seconds from going sideways and she needed to walk it back without anyone noticing she'd seen it coming. "Oh, wow," she said. "Yeah, small world. Are you having a good race?" The hygienist smiled. "I really am." And that was fine. That was a completely normal thing to say. Rebecca told herself that. She told herself the tightness in her chest was nothing, just the mild social awkwardness of unexpectedly running into a near stranger. Emphasis on near. Emphasis on stranger. People ran into people at races all the time. It meant nothing. Except, Rebecca started noticing something. Not all at once. Gradually, the way you notice something wrong in a classroom before you can name what it is. Every time another runner drifted into view ahead of them on the trail, the hygienist got louder. More animated. Laughing, gesturing, performing easy friendliness for an audience that was honestly too far away to hear any of it. Big energy. Warm energy. The kind that reads as totally normal from 20 yards away. And every single time that runner dropped out of sight around a bend, the animation shut off. Cleanly. Completely. Like a switch. The gaps between runners never closed. They stayed fixed. Managed. Rebecca noticed this and told herself she was being paranoid. She noticed it again and told herself the same thing. The conversation rolled on. Light, surface level, almost pleasant. The hygienist mentioned she'd been running a lot lately, since the spring, she said, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Rebecca smiled back. Her gaze dropped just for a second to the zippered pocket on the hygienist's vest. It sat wrong, too rigid, too still. Energy gels shift when you run. Phones bounce. Keys rattle. Whatever was in that pocket didn't move at all. Mile 6. Rebecca's legs were starting to talk to her. Not screaming, not yet. Just that low, honest conversation that starts around the halfway point of a race when your body quietly reminds you that training for 10 miles a week and racing 13 are two different commitments. Her quads were heavy. Her left hip flexor was doing that thing it always did around mile 5, a faint tightening that she usually ran through without much trouble. Today it felt louder than usual. She was a science teacher. She understood the math without wanting to. The hygienist hadn't broken a sweat. The conversation had been rolling for 3 miles now, light, surface level, the kind of easy back and forth that happens between strangers at the back of a race pack. The hygienist had asked about her job. Rebecca had told her. Middle school science, 7th grade, Jefferson Middle over in Charlestown. The hygienist had nodded and asked follow-up questions that were just specific enough to seem genuinely interested and just vague enough to reveal nothing about herself. It had the texture of normal conversation. Rebecca kept telling herself that. Then around mile 5.5, something shifted. It was gradual at first, easy to miss. The hygienist stopped asking questions and started talking, circling something at the edges, the way a person does when they're working up to a point they've already decided to make. Oblique at first. "It's hard," she said, almost to herself, eyes on the trail ahead. "When your whole life gets pulled out from under you. When everything you worked for just disappears. And you know exactly why it happened. You know exactly who." Rebecca kept her pace, kept her face neutral, said something sympathetic and non-committal the way you do when a conversation takes a turn you didn't see coming and you're not sure yet how sharp the turn is. The hygienist looked over at her. "I was fired," she said, simply, cleanly, the way you state a fact that has been stated so many times inside your own head that it has lost all its rough edges. "In the spring, someone reported me. Made a complaint to the practice manager. She paused. I've spent a lot of time figuring out who. She was still looking at Rebecca when she said it. Not accusatory. Not angry. Just certain. The way a person looks when they have already closed every door in an argument and locked them all from the inside. Rebecca's stomach dropped about 2 inches. She ran for a few strides without saying anything, just processing. Then she said, carefully and clearly, what was true. She was a patient at that office, not an employee. She went twice a year, sat in the chair and left. She had never reported anyone for anything in her life. She barely knew this woman's name until 40 minutes ago. She was a middle school science teacher from across town who paid $42 to run a Halloween race on her Saturday off, and she genuinely, completely, had absolutely no idea what the hygienist was talking about. She said all of it, clearly, genuinely, with the particular helpless honesty of someone who has absolutely nothing to confess. The hygienist listened to every word, nodded at the right moments, the careful, patient nods of someone who has already decided the outcome of the conversation and is simply waiting for it to arrive. Then she looked at Rebecca with something that wasn't anger. It was quieter than anger. It had been sitting longer than anger. It had been sitting since the spring, in whatever small, airless place she'd been living in, turning this over and over until every surface was smooth. I believe, she said, that you believe that. The trail switchbacked hard to the left. The canopy closed overhead. The light dropped. Rebecca pulled out her phone without breaking stride, muscle memory, the automatic reach, and looked at the screen. No signal. She already knew this. Dead zones on this stretch of the AT were part of the deal, listed right there in the race information packet she'd read twice before Saturday. It had been a neutral fact this morning. A minor inconvenience. The kind of thing you note and file away and forget about. It wasn't neutral anymore. She did the math. She was a science teacher. She couldn't stop herself. Mile 6. Body trained for 10 miles a week. Legs already heavy. Hip flexor already complaining. Tank already reading low. The hygienist had been running since the spring. 3 seasons of deliberate, focused training that Rebecca could see in every easy stride, every unlabored breath, every mile that hadn't touched her at all. Rebecca could not outrun this woman. Not on this trail, not at this mile, not in this body. The trees pressed in on both sides. The trail ahead was empty. The trail behind was empty. Somewhere far back, invisible around 2 switchbacks, the nearest runner was moving at their own pace toward their own finish line, completely unaware that anything on this mountain was wrong. The hygienist's hand moved to the zippered pocket on her vest. It rested there, easy and loose, the way you rest your hand on something you have already decided to use. Rebecca kept running. She kept her face completely still, and she started quietly and desperately looking for options. Rebecca tried one more time. She laid it out carefully, patiently. The way she explained things to 7th graders who didn't want to understand something, not talking down, not rushing, just building it brick by brick until the logic was unavoidable. She was a patient at that office, not an employee, not a colleague, not anyone with access to a complaint form or a practice manager's email or any of the internal machinery of that place. She sat in the chair twice a year, stared at the ceiling tiles and left. She did not know who filed a complaint. She did not know what the complaint said. She did not know anything about any of it, and she was genuinely, completely, with every part of her telling the truth. She watched the hygienist's face while she talked. Nothing moved. That was the thing that scared her most. Not anger, Not agitation, not the flushed, reactive expression of someone being challenged. Just stillness, the particular stillness of a person who has lived inside every version of this argument for 6 months, who has walked every room and tried every door and locked them all from the inside. There was no angle available that reached her, because this had stopped being about facts a long time ago. It had sealed itself shut in whatever quiet, airless place she had been sitting in since the spring, and no amount of patient, careful, honest explanation was going to unseal it. Nothing was ever going to land. Rebecca knew this at mile 6.5 on a mountain in West Virginia with no signal and heavy legs, and a woman running effortlessly beside her whose hand had not moved from that zippered pocket in 4 minutes. She knew it the way she knew things in a classroom when a situation had already passed, the point where talking fixes it. The hygienist unzipped the pocket. No speech, no escalation. No final accusation or dramatic pause or any of the things that happen in movies before something terrible occurs. Just a smooth, practiced motion, the zipper, the hand, the instrument. And then a single deliberate strike to Rebecca's lower left side, just above the hip, angled in and up. Fast, quiet, almost polite. The same quiet economy she must have brought to a routine cleaning. In and out, in under 2 seconds. Then she stepped back. Rebecca's brain registered it before her body did. That's how it works, apparently. The mind gets the memo first and spends one long, strange second simply acknowledging the information. She looked down. She put her hand there. She looked at her hand. Then the hygienist did something Rebecca was not prepared for. She spread her arms wide. Both arms, straight out from her shoulders, those plastic wings catching the cold October air, and she just ran. Not away, not fleeing, not the panicked sprint of someone escaping a scene. She zigzagged up the trail like a child released into a field on the last day of school, pure and loose and completely weightless. The foam star on her wand bobbed with every stride. Her white dress flared out behind her. She was laughing. Rebecca could hear it, high and bright and absolutely untethered from what had just happened. And she rounded the bend in the trail and the laughing faded and the white dress disappeared and she was gone. Just gone. Rebecca stood there for 1 second, maybe 2. Then she took a step forward and her legs simply stopped. Not dramatically, not like the movies. They didn't buckle or give out or send her sprawling. They just stopped. Quietly. Completely. The way a car engine stops when something fundamental is no longer happening inside it. She went down slow. One knee, then the other, then sideways, and the ground came up and she let it. The dirt was cold against her cheek. She could smell it. Wet earth and fallen leaves and something sharp underneath, mineral and ancient, the smell of a mountain that has been here for 300 million years and will be here for 300 million more, and does not register the difference between one more Saturday and any other. She was a science teacher. She knew what organs did. She knew what the kidney's job was, and she knew what happened when that job stopped. And she knew what the word minutes meant in this context, and she knew, with the flat and terrible clarity of someone who understands the biology, exactly what was happening inside her right now. She did not panic, not because she was brave. The panic simply wasn't available. Her brain had quietly removed it from the menu and replaced it with a strange, flat calm that spread through her chest like cold water. She would describe it to her therapist later, many times in many sessions, as the most frightening part of the whole thing. Not the instrument, not the wings, the calm. The AT was silent in every direction. A woodpecker worked at something high up in the canopy, 3 short knocks and then nothing. The light came down through the October trees in long pale shafts, the same amber light she had been running through for 6 miles, the same light she had thought about working into a lesson. Refraction, seasonal change, the angle of light in October. She thought about her 7th graders. She thought about the lab report stack on her kitchen table. She thought about Danny, who had bailed 2 weeks ago because of her knee, and she thought, with a strange, sideways gratitude that she would also describe to her therapist many times, good. Good that Danny isn't here. The woodpecker knocked 3 more times and went quiet. Rebecca pressed her hand harder against her side and stared up through the canopy at the pale October sky and breathed. Footsteps on the trail. Fast ones. Coming from behind. A sweep volunteer, running tight intervals on this course the way good sweeps do, covering the back of the pack in overlapping loops, came around the lower switchback at a jog and stopped. What happened next moved very fast. Rebecca survived. The margin, measured later in a trauma bay in Martinsburg, was somewhere between 8 and 12 minutes. The attending physician would use the word remarkable twice in the same sentence, which is not a thing attending physicians typically do. She survived. But as she lay on that trail waiting for the footsteps to reach her, staring up through the October canopy at a sky that looked exactly the same as it had an hour ago when everything was fine, she became aware of something she could not explain and would not try to. The trail behind her was completely silent. No footsteps fading into the distance. No crunch of leaves, no snap of branches, no sound of a woman in plastic wings running away through the West Virginia woods. Nothing. Just the mountain, just the wind, just the woodpecker, starting up again somewhere high above her. 3 knocks, then silence. The investigation lasted 11 months. Rebecca cooperated with everything. Every interview, every follow-up, every request to walk back through it one more time from the beginning. She gave them everything she had, the costume, the wings, the wand with the foam star, the zippered pocket, the way the animation shut off every time a runner dropped out of sight, the exact words. I believe that you believe that. The investigators came up completely empty. The hygienist had been a real employee at the dental practice on Maple. HR records, tax documents, 2 years of unremarkable performance reviews until the complaint in March 2017, terminated late March, signature on the checkout form. After that, nothing. No forwarding address, no lease, no car registration after April, no digital footprint of any kind after the morning of the race. She registered under her real name, paid with a prepaid cash card from a Martinsburg pharmacy, collected her bib Friday afternoon. Then she stepped off that trail and out of the world, as cleanly as if the mountain had simply folded her in. The case is still open, technically. Now here's the part that really gets me. The real source of the complaint surfaced 4 months in, almost by accident. A patient, not Rebecca, a woman sitting in the bay next to the hygienists on an unremarkable Tuesday in February 2017. She'd heard something during her cleaning, a voice at the wrong register, a patient saying something uncomfortable, a response that didn't sound right. One earbud in. When her cleaning was done, she stopped at the front desk on her way out and mentioned it. Just so you know, I don't know if it's anything. And then walked to her car and never thought about it again. The investigators found her, explained what her 30-second conversation at a front desk had set in motion 7 months later on a mountain trail in West Virginia. She was devastated. Investigators told her it wasn't her fault. Her therapist told her. Every rational part of her own brain told her. It didn't help. Rebecca was told about her. Just the shape of it. A stranger who overheard something and said something and went home. She drove home, graded papers, made dinner. She knew she wasn't the woman who deserved to carry this. Wrong place, wrong pace, wrong stretch of trail. That was it. She knew this. She'd been told this repeatedly. It didn't help even a little bit. Because here's the thing, and this is the part I can't stop thinking about. 2 cleanings ago, Rebecca had been in that same chair, ceiling tiles, one earbud in, half listening. From the bay next to hers, something filtered through, a voice at the wrong register, a patient saying something clipped and uncomfortable, a response that didn't sound right. Present, registered, gone. She finished her cleaning, scheduled her next appointment with the other hygienist for a reason she never examined, and drove back to school without thinking about it once. Not until January. Plastic chair, detective across a metal table. When she understood all at once what that Tuesday afternoon actually was. Nobody is to blame. Both women made completely ordinary, completely human decisions. The woman who spoke, the woman who didn't. Neither was wrong. That's what makes it so hard to sit with. 2 years later, Rebecca is at a starting line. Different race, different trail. Danny is beside her, knee-heeled, complaining about the cold. Cowbells, costumes, somebody's Bluetooth speaker bleeding into the October air. The horn sounds, the pack surges. Rebecca finds her pace and settles in. For the first 3 miles, every race, every time, without exception. She does not put her headphones in. She listens to the footsteps behind her. She counts them. She knows exactly how many there are. The tooth fairy is gone. That wound healed, the open bay stays.